We don't have any foreigners around here, so why don't you just move on? We don't want any trouble.
Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're taking a look at the 10 rarest PlayStation 2 games. While the PlayStation 2 received an extremely overwhelming amount of support from devs big and small, there were many titles that still got swept under the rug, whether that was due to short shelf lives or a minuscule number of prints. Have you gotten to play any of these for yourself? Let us know down in the comments. Before we begin, we publish new videos all week long, so be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Haunting Ground.
Being in the car with...
Haunting Ground is one of the most commonly mentioned games we came across when putting this list together. Developed by Capcom, Haunting Ground was scrutinized for tedious gameplay and awful pacing, yet praised for its horror, story, and the way it helps the player connect with Fiona. While it isn't known why exactly this game became so rare, many point to the typical reasons: a lower number of units printed compared to bigger IPs, floundering review scores, or even, the simple lack of popularity. Another factor could have been the reception to Clock Tower 3, which was released in 2003 to lukewarm reviews and abysmal sales numbers. Rule of Rose. Rule of Rose came under fire by many fear-mongering European news outlets in the months leading up to launch. Many rumors were being tossed around about the M-rated game's supposedly violent nature and erotic subject matter. Even the Video Standards Council dismissed these allegations, but that wasn't enough to dissuade the European Parliament from banning the game. This was perhaps the primary reason as to why Rule of Rose is one of the rarest PS2 games. However, for the North American and Japanese versions, copies for those regions are scarce simply due to a minuscule number of prints. Luckily, one Japanese studio by the name of Onion Games voiced their interests in making a remaster of Rule of Rose in 2021. At the time of this video, no further developments have been made. Xenosaga Episode 3.
For that matter, what division of Vector even handles the base theory development?
Episode 3 is probably the big reason why Xenosaga died the way it did. While the game overall was just as good as the first two episodes, many speculate that its flaws had a heavy hand in not just its reception, but sales as well. Episode 3 was simply more of the same from the previous games, and those who jumped in without playing the games prior were left wondering just what in the hell happened in the story? And let's be honest, how many people were actively going to seek out copies of the first two games to spend over 100 hours just so the third game made more sense? As a result, Episode 3 only sold a few 100,000 copies, and while it may not be as rare as the other games on this list, the high price tags on various seller sites like eBay paint a slightly different story.
Wouldn't it be a good idea for us to go too?
Don't worry, it's just gonna be a reconnaissance, so Elsa's small size is better suited.
Garfield saving Arlene.
When provoked, I will fight back, especially when my food is on the line.
Of all the games that are widely considered rare, we were not anticipating a Garfield game to be among them. Garfield saving Arlene is so rare that it is almost impossible to find the necessary files to run it through emulation, at least when you're looking through more trustworthy websites, if you catch our drift. Released only in Japan and Europe, the game sees Garfield and Odie travel across 9 worlds to rescue Arlene. While no reason has been given regarding the game's scarce nature, one can safely assume it was because of the markets it launched in. But really, is Garfield even remotely big in Japan or Europe? We doubt it, but we've heard stranger things before. Obscure. Even though you can play Obscure and its sequel through the gracious Steam platform, that does not take away the fact that the first game is among the rarest PS2 games ever made. Not to be blunt, but we can kind of see why no one bought it back in 2004. Publisher Dreamcatcher Interactive never published a game that saw moderate success, and developer Hydrovision Entertainment had no reputation among gamers. In other words, there was simply no marketing power behind another survival horror game in a sea of Clock Towers, Silent Hills, and Resident Evils. It wasn't until years after the abysmal 2008 reboot of Alone in the Dark and a dozen shovelware titles that Hydrovision's first game started gaining some recognition. Lord knows how many functional physical copies remain in the world. .hack/quarantine.
Counterattack? No.
The .hack series isn't really worth the ducats if you're looking for a phenomenal JRPG series to play through, and yet that hasn't stopped this final entry from being one of the most expensive and rarest games among collectors. Critics at the time commonly described it as mediocre at best. As to why it's rare, one could chalk it up to a similar situation as Xenosaga Episode 3. Too much of a requirement to know the events of previous games, thus leading to poor sales. The problem is that as each new .hack game launched, reception got worse and worse. Both critics and fans complained about the lack of improvement across the games, with one Christian nut of GameSpy pointing out that Bandai Namco demanded $200 for 4 games that have, quote, extreme lack of improvements, end quote, and described the whole series as, quote, downright exploitative, end quote. Perhaps fans felt the same way, and that's why Quarantine is the rarest of the quadrilogy. Ocean Commander. Though Ocean Commander did make it to Wii and DS in North America in 2009, its original PS2 launch was highly questionable and almost catastrophic for developer CyberPlanet Interactive. Various corners of the game collecting market point out that Dutch publisher Phoenix Games only ever released Ocean Commander in Italy rather than the entire PAL region. Unfortunately, Italy was going through a major economic downturn at the time of the game's release, and it would continue on for quite a few more years. With Italian players looking for cheaper alternatives and not looking to go through converting currency, Ocean Commander flopped, thus prompting the Wii and DS releases in North America. Samurai Western.
Get a load of this feller.
Samurai Western was one of several games made by Atlus that have long since been forgotten. In its defense, it didn't really have much of a chance to grab people to begin with. On top of receiving middling reviews, Samurai Western simply did not receive as many prints in both NTSC and PAL regions. And now, if you want a physical copy of this, for whatever reason, you'll need to fork over a minimum of $100 to $200.
So why don't you just move on? We don't want any trouble.
Pardon me, mademoiselle.
Futurama. This one is the oddest case of game scarcity we have come across. Futurama was developed long after the series was initially cancelled, treated as a sort of lost episode. The weird part of it came at launch though. For some reason, the NTSC version did not receive a decent number of prints. The PAL version, on the other hand, almost came in an absurd abundance. This really confused fans as Futurama's popularity was predominantly in North America and not so much in Europe. Couple that with the game's poor sales on both PlayStation 2 and Xbox, and you've got an example of not only scarcity, but probably poor marketing and manufacturing. Quan. Quan is, without question, the poster child of extremely rare games. Just about every website you can shop for old games on sells this title for extremely ludicrous prices. But what is Quan exactly? Well, it's a survival horror game. And it's a survival horror game developed by From Software before they made Demon's Souls and Elden Ring and Bloodborne. And it was published by various companies across the world that no one was paying attention to at the time. As expected, nobody covered the game outside of the review cycle, thus leading to absolutely no presence in the general public and also getting horrific sales numbers. And if you somehow, by some miracle, still have a functioning physical copy of Quan and have kept it in an excellent, almost mint condition, well, it might be able to cover some bills for you and more.
Who are you?
Check out these other great clips from MojoPlays, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.